Good afternoon. It's, happy Brexit Day. It's the 31st of January 2020. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. Joining me in the studio today, Patrick Henningsen from 21st Century Wire. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
Great to be with you, Mike.
Today is the day, Patrick. Are you feeling free?
I'm feeling the freedom. I really am. This is a historic day, Mike, and everybody is so upbeat. If you go out on the streets, it's like a new country. You can't believe it. There are local Conservative MPs handing out 20-pound notes to everybody. Petrol prices are down, but the taxes aren't, so that sort of cancels each other out.
Well,
food is cheaper. There's more fish to choose from. There's a lot more fish in the fish pescatorian section. And yeah, so we're feeling the freedom.
Yes.
Really.
Of course, none of that has happened at all. There's been no change whatsoever. But we've got beautiful videos like this one that's on screen at the moment, which the government was pushing out today, and wonderful front pages in the media. So let's have a look at them. Here's the Daily Express. Yes, we did it. Brilliant. The Daily Mail. A new dawn for Britain.
A new dawn.
Yes. Of course, they sort of, White Cliffs of Dover, sort of Second World War imagery sort of there. You just expect to see a Spitfire flying over the top. What have we got? The Sun. Our time has come. Fantastic. The Daily Star. Tonight is a truly historic moment for our great nation. That's right. It's the end of dry January. Okay. That's the Daily Star's take on it. The Metro. Goodbye, EU, thank you and goodbye. Thank you and goodbye, that is. The Eye, UK's leap into the unknown, so slightly less positive response there. The Guardian, even worse, small island. After 47 years, Britain leaves the EU, right? So this is fantastic. The Financial Times, here we go. Britain bows out of EU with a mixture of optimism and regret.
Oh, very balanced coverage there.
Yes.
That's the first one, yes.
That's the Financial Times, and the London Times then saying PM wants Canada-style trade deal with Brussels. Here is a typical response from an MP. We've got Bill Cash here saying it's a huge sigh of relief to begin with, but it's also the fact that the British people will be able to govern themselves. They'll be able to decide their own laws in accordance with their wishes in a general election. And the question is, Patrick, is that true? Now, look, the UK column was criticised in June 2016 after the referendum result because, of course, everybody wanted to celebrate a fantastic referendum result. And we said, but hold on a second, it's not quite that simple. So it really isn't quite that simple. Let's have a look. The Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph was probably the closest because they were quoting Boris Johnson, who said, this is not an end, but a beginning. This is the moment when the dawn breaks and the curtain goes up on a new act. And that's exactly correct because, of course, we get a hint from Michael Gove. He was speaking to Kay Burley on Sky this morning, and she said, will the UK trade access on fishing in order to do a financial market deal? Now, of course, the government had published their stance on fishing a couple of days ago. We covered it on Wednesday's news, and basically saying that today, as with everything else, nothing changes because we've entered into this transition period where the negotiation for our future relationship begins. Kay Burley saying, will the UK trade access for fishing in order to do a financial markets deal? Here is Michael Gove, and what was his response? No. And it was a very definitive no. That was all he said. She then asked him to clarify that because, it was definitive. There's no way, he said, no, we're not trading access on fishing in order to do a financial market deal. But then, is that what he said? Because then he made a qualification on it. He said this, my own view is that we can have a friendly relationship with other countries. We can regulate their access to our waters in a way that will work for everyone, but we're in control. So that's not a definitive no at all.
That's
in
a
fact,
yes.
That's a yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a situation where on the day that we're leaving, already MPs are simply lying to the press. He said no, and then he said actually yes. So which is it?
Well, this is my point from the beginning. Is a lot of this, Mike, a public relations exercise? Could you say it's a political exercise? Could it be a partisan exercise as well? Because the government, who came in on a massive majority in the last general election, this is their big moment, so they want to make the most out of this. This could be the only positive news coming out of the Tory government for the next 5 years. We don't know. I mean, our austerity policy is going to continue. What about all of these other important hanging issues? So this is the question. How much of this is public relations?
Well, I think the whole thing has been PR from the beginning. Now, of course, there are serious implications. If what the UK column is, if our position is correct, there are serious implications for what's going on here, because what the divorce deal, Brexit today, does is it takes us out of the EU treaties that we're in, Maastricht and Lisbon and so on, but we will re-enter new treaties as a result of the negotiation. So at the end of the transition period, we will have new treaties. And of course, aside from fishing and farming and the other policy areas, the one policy area that we keep coming back to is defence. And we've got more to say on that now, because here's Lord James of Blackheath. Well, he has been told that he must resign from the House of Lords. And why has he been told that? Because he dared to ask a parliamentary question on the future relationship between the UK and the EU with respect to the Defence Union. And the question that he asked was this one. He said to ask Her Majesty's Government whether any agreements have been made with the EU about British participation in 1, the establishment of a European Defence Union, 2, any military command and control procedures, 3, the future of Five Eyes, 4, the procurement of military equipment from an EU-wide organisation, and 5, the transfer of nuclear technology licensed to the UK by the United States. If so, what are the details of any such agreements, and whether any such agreements are separate to any agreements related to the UK's departure from the EU? Okay, so that's quite a good question, quite well framed, and that was put forward a couple of weeks ago. And a couple of days ago, Baroness Goldie, who is the Defence Minister, replied to that. And this is what she had to say. The UK has no agreement with the EU about Britain's British participation in the establishment of a European Defence Union. She went on to say the withdrawal agreement and the political declaration provide the option but no obligation for the UK to continue to contribute to CSDP operations and missions on a voluntary basis. This does not undermine the UK's sovereignty or command and control of our armed forces, nor does it oblige us to participate in a defence union or any EU defence initiatives. And there were a number of other points that she made, and if you want to read the whole statement, it's linked from David Scott's most recent article on this, which can be seen on the front page of the UK column website at the moment, at the top right. Now, one thing that she claimed was that the UK has not entered into any agreements with the EU to participate in the procurement of military equipment, but it was really this: no agreement with the EU about Britain's participation in a defence union. But here's the problem. Her predecessor, Earl Howe, who is currently the Deputy Leader of the House of Lords and is one of the people who is demanding, apparently, that Blackheath resigns, he put us into the EI2 agreement, and he didn't literally say this, I've paraphrased this. I signed the UK into the European Intervention Initiative, this is EI2. The agreement states EI2 intends to contribute to ongoing efforts within the European Union to deepen defence cooperation, notably PESCO. That's clear. So Baroness Goldie's statement is correct as far as it goes, because she says the UK has no agreement with the EU about British participation in European Defence Union. We have agreements with outside the EU, separate to the EU, but with other EU member states to do exactly that, to develop a European Defence Union.
So not officially with the EU itself, we're talking about Brussels, right? But there are agreements with the members of the EU in a collective defence arrangements, right?
And this is exactly how they're doing it. They're making these agreements not with the EU itself, but with lots of other EU member states, both bilateral agreements and multilateral agreements. And we will say once again, if you look at the Defence Union diagram that the EU produced with its 8 pillars, the left-hand pillar is bilateral and multilateral agreements. And the EU has stated very clearly that Defence Union cannot stand without all those pillars being in place. So again, the government at the very least is being utterly misleading in its description of the situation.
So these two statements by Baroness Goldie and Lord Howe don't square with each other, do they?
They absolutely do not. And so if we're in the situation where government ministers are misleading members of the House of Lords, which is what seems to be the case in this case, then how can any member of the British public believe that we are leaving the EU today?
Well, a lawyer would answer that question like Baroness Goldie did. Officially, we don't have anything signed with the EU, and like Lord Howe did. But a representative of the people needs to read between the lines and say, are we in any agreements or not, whether Brussels or with EU members?
Right.
Because this is the important question.
Absolutely.
Which I think is what Lord James was trying to ask, correct?
Well, that would have been his intention, but of course, what the government does every time it responds to a member of the public on this question or to a parliamentarian, it seems, on this question, is that they're very careful on how they frame the responses to make sure that what they say is correct. On paper, it seems to be correct, but in intent, it is not correct. It's deliberately misleading. So we have the situation that James of Blackheath has been told he must resign from the House of Lords. He's under serious pressure at the moment to do that. And where is this coming from? Well, it's coming from the Clerk's office. And well, this is Ed Allard, who's Clerk of the Parliaments. Now, I don't know that this is the individual who has is putting this pressure on Lord James, but certainly this is coming from one of his staff members. And this is what they've said to him. You, Lord James of Blackheath, have no constitutional right to involve yourself in defence matters. This is unbelievable.
But to ask a question isn't involving yourself, it's asking a question, right?
Any parliamentarian is entitled to ask any question on any subject at any time. This is what British democracy is about. And what the House of Lords seems to be saying to a member of the House of Lords is you have no constitutional right to do that. This is nuts. So I would like to know exactly which aspect of the Constitution prohibits any member of the House of Lords asking questions on defence. And if anybody's in any doubt, of course, about this, really, we should be considering what has been the response from the government and the establishment to these types of questions. And when they're getting this aggressive, when they're saying to a member of the House of Lords, you really need to go, whenever they ask quite a reasonable question on this subject, then people in the public should be asking why.
That is a constitutional crisis right there.
Yes.
A bona fide constitutional crisis.
Absolutely.
So people should really be raising the alarm about that.
Yes. Now, let's move on then to the next big subject, Patrick, which is, of course, Israel-Palestine.
Well, this is the deal of the century. You would have had to be on another planet not to see this story coming this week. This is the much anticipated deal, the peace deal brokered by Donald Trump, the President of the United States, supposedly between Israel and Palestine. But as you can see by the flags up on this graphic, Mike, Palestinians weren't really consulted about this deal. This was a deal done between the White House and Israel to dictate the future of the Israeli state and the Palestinian territories. Now we're going to break down in detail what this deal entails and how, or how it's not different from previous peace deals that have been offered by previous U.S. administrations or brokered by the Americans. So there's Benjamin Netanyahu there with Trump at the White House, mind you, playing the Israeli national anthem. As Trump got up onto the podium, you can watch
in the White House.
In the White House press room, I think that's where they're at. So that's historic, certainly on its own. But so you can see it. Netanyahu is all smiles, Mike. He's grinning ear to ear. He's getting everything he wants right before the third runoff in March for the contested Israeli election. So this is politically very important for Netanyahu, as it is for Donald Trump in an election year. So who is really behind this deal? Well, this was the Jared Kushner deal initially, and this is the president's son-in-law here. This is Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. This was the deal of the century. This is apparently something he slapped together, which Donald Trump just recently put his name on officially. This is what Kushner had to say in an interview with CNN recently. He said the White House's plan is a great deal, and if the Palestinians reject it, they're going to screw up another opportunity like they've screwed up every other opportunity they've ever had in their existence.
Wow.
Quite strong words in their existence, so, you know, going back a few thousand years. So this is quite a aggressive and I would say disrespectful statement by the president's son-in-law. I mean, so if he's going in to negotiate a deal, and this is the sort of rhetoric you're putting out, and
Is this how you make friends?
is this the art of the deal? Basically, you know, we're giving you an ultimatum here. This is not a deal. Clearly, this is an ultimatum.
Right.
So, Will, it gets better than that, Mike. He said past proposals have been 2 to 3 pages. This one is over 80 pages, and it has a map. It's never been done before, said Jared Kushner. So he's providing a map along with 80 pages, and we're meant to be impressed by that. So the president's son-in-law, or the president-in-law, as he's called by some people, he's really wowing them with this deal. Let's continue. It does even get better than this, believe it or not. If they screw up this opportunity, which again, they have a perfect track record of missing opportunities. If they screw this up, I think that they will have a very hard time looking at the international community in its face, saying they are victims, saying they have rights. This is a great deal for them. So if you don't accept this ultimatum, then you lose your rights, is basically what he's saying. And yeah, you know, and they have no standing in the international community.
Yeah.
So this is even worse than previous peace plans that have been put forward, and incredibly arrogant by Jared Kushner. And you know, everybody's saying this out in the journalistic sphere, by the way. This is what pretty much 90% of a lot of the publications I've read have been saying. So let's move on and see how's the Palestinian leadership reacted to this, Mike. Here's Mahmoud Abbas, president of the Palestinian Authority. This is what he said: Jerusalem is not for sale, and all of our rights, those are not for sale or for compromise. Plots, deals of the century, plans to liquidate the Palestinian cause are doomed to failure. This is the important thing you're looking at here, is there was a split and a schism within the Palestinian leadership before this deal of the century was unveiled. Mm-hmm. You had major splits between the PA, between Hamas in Gaza, between Islamic Jihad in Gaza. Now you see a united front among the Palestinians, and in a way that only Trump could do.
And what was Mahmoud Abbas's personal popularity like?
It wasn't great. In the West Bank, accepted as the leader of the Palestinian Authority, not really very popular at all in Gaza. But now, again, Trump has this great ability through his bombast to galvanize the opposition, wherever it is in the world. So he's done it once again. The magic of Trump continues. So you can see the technique by the U.S., by the Israeli leadership, is to say this is a problem of the Palestinian leadership, that we're giving them another opportunity. This is what they did with Camp David. It was basically the same con. We made you a perfectly good offer and you rejected it. Therefore, you deserve everything that you got after that, which is to be pounded by the IDF and lose more territory, etc. So they're doing the same thing again now. So they'll continue to demonize the Palestinian leadership and blame them if it fails. But here now, this is interesting. They're going after the King of Jordan. So a synchronized attacks on King Abdullah of Jordan. Why? He's not exactly playing ball on this issue with Tel Aviv. And so this is what Haaretz revealed. Israel has big plans for Jordan, but they don't include King Abdullah II. Is that a regime change threat?
That sounds very like. Yes.
So he's a very key individual here, although he's a monarch, the Hashemite king of Jordan. He's also very key because the United States has a very close relationship with Jordan. Britain has an extremely close relationship with Jordan that goes back a long, long ways. They have great cooperation on all levels of intelligence, military affairs, and government affairs. So how is this going to play in terms of the coalition that normally supports Israel? Is there a plan to take out this particular royal family in Jordan in order to make way for the Greater Israel Project and to make it a lot easier and smoother? Obviously, the King of Jordan has got an issue. Is maybe the majority or close to the majority of residents in Jordan have some Palestinian descent, Mike.
And what's
and refugees as well.
What's his position as leader of Jordan? Is he as much supported as, for example, Assad is in Syria? Or is there an opportunity for outside forces to come into Jordan and stir up conflict within the country?
There's always a chance of that. He's definitely weaker in terms of military power and a security state than Saudi Arabia would be, for instance, or some of the other more wealthy oil states like Qatar. So he is vulnerable, but he's also popular with a lot of people in Jordan. He is generally regarded by a lot of Jordanians as, a good ruler doing a good job, but there's always dissenting parties there. So this is interesting, something to keep an eye on there. Let's take a look at the deal of the century here. So what are we looking at? So this is promising a two-state solution. Once again, the whole deal here is predicated on the promise of a Palestinian state. We'll show you what that state's going to look like in a minute. And so a lot of people think the two-state solution is dead, and it was really just used to buy time for Israel to make facts on the ground to increase settlements, and which they did over the last 30 years. Palestinian statehood is conditional according to this deal, and could happen later.
Oh, so the day they sign on the dotted line, they don't get a state?
No.
They've got to do things before they might get a state at some point in the future?
And if there's any bad behavior, quote, bad behavior by the Palestinians, then they won't get that state, or the deal will kind of be frozen at that point, and then you're back to the status quo. So it's already looking good, isn't it? It's looking great. So the Palestinians must recognize Greater Israel and Jerusalem as its capital. That was non-negotiable for the Palestinians. And of course, the U.S. and Israel just drove right through that barricade of international laws and UN resolutions. So that's not good. Palestinians must recognize a pure Jewish ethno-nationalist state of Israel. So imagine the backlash in Europe against ethno-nationalism, and in the United States, particularly by the liberal left. Where are they on this issue? They should all be up in arms. I mean, is there a place for a pure racial ethno-nationalist state, largely a European settler state in the Middle East in 2020, in the 21st century?
So is this, am I wrong that this is demand for apartheid?
Yes, this is pure apartheid. This is what we call high apartheid, on a level of formality that even South Africa didn't quite have. So let's take a look at the rest of this here. Palestinians must reject terrorism. This is a really important condition to them getting on the path to statehood. So that means they are not allowed to resist any Israeli land grabs or IDF military operations. If they do, that will be deemed as terrorism, and therefore the deal will will be frozen once again, and then they'll have to go back to protracted negotiations.
And by resist, that includes throwing rocks?
I don't know. It's not really defined. This is quite a wide berth in terms of how you arbitrarily define all this. So, and again, must meet long list of other unattainable benchmarks. So, as Jared Kushner said, 80 pages with a map. So they've got various benchmarks in there the Palestinians have to meet. Otherwise, no deal. Or they can sort of cancel the deal or put the deal on ice, basically. So what does this mean? Let's say what this basically means is Israel will control Palestinian airspace, Israel to control Palestinian borders, people, goods, and services in and out of the Palestinian territory, and no right of return for Palestinian refugees. Interestingly, though, and I didn't note this here on the graphic, but according to this deal, there will be financial compensation for Jews who had to leave Arab countries. They're going to get financial compensation. That's interesting. So Israel is to control Palestinian access to water, power, airspace, and probably includes telecommunications to some degree as well. Israel to restrict use of weapons in Palestinian territory, so that's going to be heavily regulated. In other words, as it is right now, as it stands right now. So regardless of whether the Palestinians accept the plan, Israel has America's blessing to annex the illegally occupied West Bank, the Jordan Valley, and any other territory it covets. So that's going to happen regardless of whether this deal is agreed or not agreed by the Palestinians. So it's an ultimatum, basically. And the U.S. government has officially sanctioned and legalized apartheid rule in Israel and Palestine. That's what this basically boils down to. They have officially sanctioned and legalized apartheid in the occupied territory. So as with Oslo, the peace process, Clinton and Bush's roadmap to peace, Trump and Kushner's deal of the century was designed to be rejected. This is the important point. It's designed to be rejected and to buy time for Israel's next phase of land expansion, effectively continuing with the status quo. So really this is window dressing here. So this is the latest Israeli-U.S. deception, and this will almost certainly lead to war. This is what many experts are saying, Mike. So that's a really important part of this.
Well, an Israeli-Palestinian war or a broader war in the Middle East?
Both.
Right.
Both. It will certainly lead to continued skirmishes and violence between the state of Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, but this has the danger of also expanding into a wider war.
Okay.
That's what this deal will lead to, according to many experts, long-term experts on the region. So I will say I did predict how this was going to go down like a ton of bricks back in May. And I'll point people to this article, Trump and Sons, Kushner's deal of the century, basically bribing the Palestinians to go away. So that's what I said back in May, and it really hasn't changed much since then. So Trump and Sons, that's kind of a colloquial name we come up with this arrangement here. Here's the business card for Trump and Sons. And you can see Jared behind father-in-law, Donnie there, established in 2017. God's #1 property developer. That's their business card. Let's take a look at what Trump and Sons has got in store here for the region. This is their map, a vision of peace, the conceptual map of the future of Israel and Palestine, according to Trump and Sons. As you can see, Mike, take a look at the little green splotches there. That's what supposedly what could be, possibly, if they behave, that could be the Palestinian state. So this reminds us very much like Bantustans in South Africa, townships and Bantustans. Yeah. It's really that same system. Or in America, we have the reservation system, the Native American reservation system. And that's more like the blueprint, probably, that Israel is looking to implement, is the reservation system. So they'll get sovereignty, but only on paper, and their borders and everything else will be completely controlled. They don't actually own anything. So that's how it's looking here. And this was the big kicker. Back in May, this was the big promise that $50 billion of direct foreign investment will appear somehow to help stimulate the Palestinian economy. And Kushner was meant to drum that cash up from the Arabs, from the Gulf states. But guess what? It hasn't arrived yet. So it's been 6-7 months, no Gulf cash to fill this $50 billion war chest of investment that's meant to stimulate, quote, the Palestinian economy. Of course, that means the Palestinians won't own anything from that direct foreign investment. That'll be Gulf-owned businesses and enterprises. So, but it hasn't appeared. So Trump and Sons is still working on the 50 billion, and this is really what this is a continuation of here. As you can see, that was Palestine there in 1946. This is the incredibly shrinking Palestinian state, and there you can see what's left of it in 2012, and that's a recent version of this map, but that's very similar to what we showed you with the Trump-Kushner map of Palestine. A few green specks, that's what's left. I assume that's going to be probably half the size of that in about 5 to 10 years. So even less, smaller green specks, actually. So brought to you by Trump and Sons, there. So take a screenshot of their business card and get in touch if you want to build a settlement in Greater Israel. So here is Noura Arikat. She is a Palestinian-American human rights lawyer. This is what she said. Palestinians have not been demanding a state. Palestinians have been demanding freedom, dignity, equality. They want the right to return to their homes, not a plot of land that they can put a flag over and pretend is a state. This is not a game. This is about life and death and freedom, okay? She said this live on CNN, actually, this past week. So that's the point, Mike, is the two-state solution has really been a con. From Camp David till today, they're still using this scam to buy time, to increase the amount of homes and land that's being annexed by Israel, and they're doing it again. It's the identical script to what we saw from all of the previous U.S. administrations, and they've just given it a facelift.
Oh, okay. And just to finish this off, then, I mean, Trump did make promises, in the past, as he was campaigning, and also since he became president, that he was going to solve this problem. Do you think that this is going to, as he campaigns for the next election, is this going to be a problem for him, that this is one thing that he has not succeeded in achieving? I
don't think so. It's not going to be a big problem for him, and I'll tell you why, because both the Republicans and the Democrats are pretty much bought and paid for with regards to the Israeli lobby, and they don't tolerate any dissent on that issue. So whether he succeeds or fails on this, it's neither here nor there. And if anybody comes up to defend the Palestinians, they'll be accused of being anti-Semitic. So this is the new political environment on both sides of the Atlantic. Is there any support generally for human rights in Palestine? Any opposition to apartheid has been redefined as anti-Semitic, which I think is ironic, of course, because the Palestinians themselves are Semitic people. So the whole thing doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and that's where we're at.
Okay. Now, if you like what the UK Column does and you would like to support us, then please head over to ukcolumn.org/community, and there are various options for helping us out there. Your help much needed and much appreciated. Now, the one front page that we didn't show you earlier was the Daily Mirror, because they they had a little bit on Brexit in the top right-hand corner, but their big headline was Killer Flu, 150 Brits in quarantine. I just wanted to remind everybody, of course, every flu is a killer, and the World Health Organization making the point that up to 650,000 people die of respiratory diseases linked to seasonal flu each year. So, the point of this particular outbreak of coronavirus needs to be taken in that context, and perhaps some of the media reporting of this is overplaying it somewhat. Although it's now been decided it is a global emergency. Now, we've had a statement. We've had a statement from Chris Whitty. Here, I've got the graphic the wrong way around. Do apologise for that. We can confirm that 2 patients in England who are members of the same family have tested positive for coronavirus. So it's now for this new version of coronavirus. So that's now in the UK confirmed, and it should also be noted, Pat, that compared to SARS in 2002, 2003, there were 8,100 cases of SARS at the time. There have now been 9,962 cases of the new coronavirus so far, 213 deaths. The rate of death is a lot lower than for SARS.
Than with SARS.
And so
the rate of detection's higher. The rate of cases
it
is
seems
higher,
to be spreading
but the
much faster. But
the fatality rate's lower. Okay.
Correct. And so the 4 chief medical officers have made a statement now, basically saying that they're advising to increase the UK risk level from low to moderate. This does not mean we think the risk to individuals in the UK has changed at this stage, but that government should plan for all eventualities. So they're taking precautions, perhaps being sensible about that, but I think still think the media is vastly overplaying their hand here. And of course, when they do that, whenever there is an emergency, if there should ever be an emergency, then it becomes much harder for people to act appropriately and react appropriately.
And I might add, Mike, that the scenes in China are, in some places, it has become a public order issue as well. There are sort of roadblocks, travel bans being put up in different parts of China, and because of the fear factor, people are reacting really irrationally. So are law enforcement in some cases as well. So it's a recipe for instability there in some communities and cities in China. So pretty shocking scenes, some of them that we've seen over the last couple of days.
Indeed. And we'll end with this. This is Damien Collins, who was until yesterday, chair of the Department for Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee. Of course, he very keen to deal with the issue of disinformation and fake news, take down harmful content, very critical of Facebook and so on. Well, of course, he was having to reapply for his job as chairman of the DCMS Select Committee, and well, he didn't make it, I'm afraid. He has been replaced by this guy, Julian Knight, who in fact is a former BBC journalist. And when he was giving us, or taking part in his interview for the job, he was very much focused on the BBC. He promised to be a critical friend to the BBC as it tries to find a new sustainable model and role in the years ahead, because it looks like the pressure is building to remove the TV licence. And so he also said, I propose that we serve as an unofficial, that's the department, the Select Committee, the DCMS Select Committee, I propose that we serve as an unofficial Royal Commission on the future of the BBC, taking the lead in forging a cross-party consensus which can win support across the House and beyond. So he believes that the BBC can thrive without a licence fee, provided it's helped with a soft landing and maps out a new role for itself which fits with the changing listening and viewing habits of the great British public. So this seems to be the focus for this particular session of Parliament, rather than for the DCMS Select Committee at least.
So they want to modernise the BBC, kind of bring it up to date with what's happening in the 21st century.
Well, I think that's. I mean, I think that this is a bit of a double-edged sword here, because on one hand, it's positive. If they're going to remove the TV license, then it means we're not subsidizing an institution we don't respect and don't want to support. On the other hand, they are looking towards a more commercial, Netflixy style business model, perhaps for it. There's still going to be the issue of how BBC News is funded, so that remains to be seen. But what we're seeing here is a change, perhaps a shifted focus from the Select Committee away from disinformation and fake news towards the BBC itself. That's important because I believe they think that's now that dealing with disinformation in inverted commas is now, in their minds, a done deal with the online harms white paper and the legislation that's coming out over that, and also all the other moves within Ofcom and other institutions that we've been talking about in the last few weeks to continue this censorship agenda. So they perhaps don't see that they need to give that the same oversight that was required in the past.
Or maybe if they wanted to bring the BBC to the cutting edge of broadcasting, they could just go and bring in the RT team to help run things for, get them up to speed for a few months and then hand it back over. What do you think?
Well, Afshin Rattansi, I think, would be an excellent man to put.
It would be a great program. Going underground on BBC. That would be probably the most successful political talk show in the world, maybe. Who knows?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Thank you very much, Patrick. We're going to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us. Have a good weekend, and we will be back at the same time, 1 p.m. as usual on Monday. We hope to see you then. Bye-bye.